What's it up? Why do you do it?
Why do I do it?
Why
Service? Or
well,
more
if
general?
if that's it you want to talk to, sure.
Yeah. We can say on the one hand that love, that the motivation for service is love, and that's where it comes from.
Mm-hmm.
But we also know that what comes out of service is love.
It really is. I love you, so I see that I have something, or I see that I'm able to give you something that'll be a benefit to you. So I do it.
Yeah.
There is a purifying element when communities, when groups come together to act and to give. It's certainly bonding. So yeah, it's a community giving, but it's also a community receiving at the same time.
How has service made a difference in your life?
I can't see life without it, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Life is not so much about whether you're happy or sad or this or that. It's about whether you have meaning in your life and purpose, or whether you don't. And once you find meaning and purpose in your life, you can't imagine living without it. Give an example of a time something went wrong while volunteering.
Oh God. An example. Well, that happens quite often. Things go wrong all the time, but fortunately, there's a lot of humor. What is your earliest memory volunteering?
The earliest memories that stick in my mind are kind of some things I did when I was in college, actually, which involved, going down to, at that time, this was before Iman existed, so we hadn't created it, so we're going down to like the Arab American Community Center on 63rd Street. Reflect on the following statement: give and take.
Automatically think about I think about plants. My photosynthesis. You give. I think about reciprocal relationships, and as long as there's a balance in the giving and the taking.
When you have a truly reciprocal relationship that develops, you reach a point where you're not calculating that. I mean, because one of the signs of unhealthiness to me is like you are still calculating that, like, oh, I gave that brother a gift this time and this time and this time, he never gave me a gift yet, I'm not going to give him a gift anymore, because of course we know spiritually that shows that you're only giving a gift to get a gift back. Right. And that's just business. That's not friendship or relationship or service or anything like that. So I think it's so beautiful to think about relationships where you lose track of who's giving and who's taking, and or where you can look at the same story in different times and you look differently. Like maybe if superficially at first, and I think this is part of growth, superficially at first you think, oh, this is who's giving in this story, but then later on you realize that person was the one receiving. And that's what you find with service, and that's what, like, the famous hadith Qudsi where the Prophet ﷺ was like, didn't you know that so-and-so was sick? If you had gone there, didn't you know you would have found me with him? So this is the beauty of service, I think, is that we go and we find Allah in the relationship, and we don't know who's giving and who's receiving. We're finding Allah with each other. So again, why do you do it?
Final answer will be, I go back to the prophetic tradition. Before I did any study or anything like that, it was just feeling like this is what I'm supposed to do, and then also the very selfish feeling that comes when you give, and you see that is received, and there's a level of awareness that you get to where you learn to give, and this is when you give for the sake of Allah, because sometimes what you give is there's not going to be an immediate response. There won't be, people are not going to give you a huge thank you, right? And there are times that happens too, right? But in the beginning, it started with seeing an appreciation for the effort, for the time, right? So that was a very selfish part of it, right? It makes me feel good, right? So, so I do whatever I can because it's what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, it's so interesting how whenever you have one of these conversations where you really try to get deep into things and really try to think about what you're doing, sometimes you go back to the beginning again in your mind. Yeah. And I also go back to the beginning of thinking, like, why did I start doing this originally? Like, what was it Really, not like what I want to tell people, not like what I think will inspire other people, because you learn things over time. This especially for those, for myself as a convert to Islam, like when someone asks you why did you convert to Islam, you always want to tell a story that they want to hear, rather than going to the true story. So, or a story that will make you look cool or something, I don't know, whatever. But then at some point, when you're alone or when you're really getting reflective, you want to think, really, what was the real reason? What was the real thing? When nobody else is here, just between me and Allah, what was the real thing? And when I think about service, like the real deal, like I said, those early experiences going down to the Markaz, the community center when I was in college, I just saw people there, and I just it was intoxicating. I was like, this. And they talk about people, we talk about sweetness of Iman, or they talk about people chasing like that high from sports or something else. Like, you have that first feeling where you see something that you never knew existed in the world, and you're constantly chasing to get back to that feeling. It's not necessarily that I think I could be like those people for others, or I just am constantly chasing those environments where I can see people like that and say, like you said, this is how people should be. Like, this is an example of how people should be, and it's so beautiful and intoxicating. And once you've seen that, you will always be chasing it the rest of your life. So that's how I feel why I keep doing service, because I'm chasing that high again.
The mercy is that everything that we are commanded to do is good for us, right? It's a great feeling that comes from being a part of a community. It's a great feeling that comes from giving of what you have to somebody, who does it, right? That is. But if you understood the benefit, if we understood more the benefit to our own selves in the duty, right? Then, like you said, you wouldn't do anything else.